I teach at the Early Childhood Center on Cholla. I teach the 2- and 3-year-olds. Well, I had my kids and was being a stay-at-home mom, and I started volunteering at my kids' preschool and realized that I loved working with young kids, and it kind of all fell into place after that. I got hired at my kids' preschool and been doing it ever since. Teaching preschool is fun because there's a lot of proud moments. I get them when they're itty-bitty, and so my proud moments happen all the time in the classroom when they remember how to spell their name, and then even better when I see them later on in the district, where if they're elected for a school office, or if they're student of the week, or if I see them win a spelling bee. So it's cool because I get to follow their scholastic careers. Okay, my favorite one is a few years ago. One of my students was in the bathroom doing his thing. I look over and he's licking the toilet. So I actually had to say, "Stop licking the toilet." Words that come out of your mouth as a preschool teacher you never think you'd have to say in real life.
Carmen Hitterdahl Simpson. I am the pre-K teacher, 4-year-olds pre-K teacher at ECC Oak Campus. I've been in Scottsdale Unified. This is my first year, but I've been teaching about 5 years. I love dealing with children and being with children on a daily basis. And I honestly stopped for a year and a half and realized it's something I would really love to do. When I've taught kindergarten, seen that aha moment when a children actually can learn to blend the letter sounds, digraphs, and have that aha moment of reading. Probably not asked me, but a girl told me when we were discussing where people were born in Phoenix, Arizona, or Scottsdale, or California, different locations, and she looked at me and said, "Duh, Miss Hitterdahl, I wasn't born in Arizona, I was born in a hospital." And it was just, I just couldn't help but laugh.
Hi, my name is Tim Marriott. I teach at Anasazi Elementary School, and I'm the physical education teacher here, teaching grades kindergarten through 5th. I guess it was kind of almost predestined for me. I come from a family of teachers. My dad was a teacher, 2 of my sisters and 2 of my brothers were teachers. And when I was a young guy, I used to help the kids in the neighborhood learn sports and play sports and organize games and stuff like that. And I was a youth soccer coach from the time I was probably 12 or 13 years old. So it just seemed like I was always working with kids and teaching kids, and kind of a natural progression of things. I would have to say that this has to be one of my proudest moments, able to receive this award. And I teach in a campus that has many outstanding teachers who on a daily basis do what I think is almost an impossible job. Special area teachers are a little different. Our job is very unique and has its own challenges, but I'm real proud to represent Anasazi and all classroom teachers.
Amy Miller. I teach at Cherokee Elementary School, and I've been teaching for 10 years. Probably my mom. My mom's in education, and she didn't want me to go into education, so I have my undergraduate in economics and business, and then I decided to go back and get my master's and just enjoy teaching. My most proud moments are when a student comes in, maybe for extra help or something like that, and the light bulb comes on, and you can see that they've finally gotten a concept that you've been teaching. One thing that was kind of funny, it just happened today, I was giving a reading test, and one of the students came up to me and said, "Miss Miller, I cannot take this reading test." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, I need to go see the nurse." And I said, "Are you not feeling good?" And he said, "No, I feel okay," he said, "but I have some dandruff." So I said, "No, you can't go to the nurse today. You need to wait until another time."
I'm Diana Larson. I'm a speech-language pathologist, so I do therapy for articulation and language stuttering with lots of students. I've always enjoyed children and loved children, and I babysat at a young age, so I decided I wanted to work with children in some ways, and I like science, so speech therapy has science and working with children. Well, a lot of moments when a lot of students, they just don't always understand what they're working on and why they're doing it, and they work really hard, and there's this moment when their little eyes light up and their face is like, I've got it, and we just kind of cheer, and that's when they understand what's going on. I have lots of funny stories. In fact, it's hard to decide which one to tell, but I think one of the funniest is I've worked with 3-year-olds through adults. Right now I work with kindergarten through 5th grade, but a few years ago I still worked with preschoolers. And one of the students, when they're preschool, you can't understand a lot of what they say, very unintelligible. But this little boy came in and we couldn't understand what he was saying. And I shared a room with a special ed student at the time, or special ed teacher at the time, and she couldn't understand him either. And we knew he was telling us about a movie, about a character, about a person, but we could not figure it out. So all of a sudden he turns around and drops his shorts, and he has on Incredible Hulk underwear, and he says, "See, Incredible Hulk." So Incredible Hulk is a hard word to say anyway, and he got his point across because he thought, oh, I've got a picture. So our jaws dropped because he dropped his shorts. But
my name is Jackie Fleming, and I teach kindergarten at Hohokam Traditional School. I decided when I was young I liked to go to school, and I had very good inspirational teachers, and I would come home and play school with my sisters, and I always thought that'd be something I'd enjoy doing as a career. One of my proudest moments is every year at the end of the year when I see the growth my students have made, in particular the kindergarten students who really learn a lot during the year. They show a lot of growth in their reading and writing and doing adding and subtraction, and it's a very proud moment.
My name is Kathleen Kempfert, and I'm the LRC teacher at Hopi Elementary School, and I work with kindergarten through 5th grade level students, and we work on reading, writing, and math. Well, there's teachers in my family, and so it was kind of something that I'd grown up with and always wanted to do. Probably getting this award. Felt very honored and am very appreciative for the recognition. I think one of the funniest things was when a student asked me if I had known President Lincoln.
Yeah, I'm Mark Obermeyer. I teach 4th grade at Kiva. This is my 26th year here at Kiva, my 29th year teaching. Well, I look back and I was really fortunate to go to a really great school, and I had some wonderful teachers that were very committed, and they inspired me and had a real big part of my life. And just through elementary school and high school, I just kind of moved in that direction, was mentored in that direction, and that's kind of how I ended up in education. I love just the interaction with the kids and the parents. I would say there's a couple, actually. You asked for one, but I'd say when I have my most pride is when I can see the children are having their aha, or they really get it, and they're just, the light bulb goes on, and they like to be there. So that's me in the classroom having pride, and I know being at this school as long as I have, people know where I'm at. And so what I've had happen over the years now is I have kids come back, and so I'm getting to hear what kids are doing as adults. I'm getting to meet their husbands and wives and their kids, so that's been a pride. As a matter of fact, this year I have one of my first students of one of my students. So that's a pride.
My name is Debbie Hawkins, and I'm a kindergarten teacher at Laguna Elementary School. I decided to become a teacher when I was a young girl. I had many positive experiences with my elementary school teachers that instilled a love of learning and teaching in my heart. I have many proud moments each day with my students, but I have to say that my proudest moment is being honored with the award of Charros Teacher of the Year, because it expresses what my colleagues think of me. One of the funniest interactions I've had with one of my kindergarten students was when I overheard him speak to a group of students saying that he's so glad that he's 6. It's the oldest he's ever been in his entire life.
I'm Christy Yunkin. I teach kindergarten at Navajo. Well, I think that if you were to ask any teacher why they wanted to become a teacher, the uniform answer would be to make a difference. And for me, my motivation for wanting to become a teacher probably stems from the fact that I was a struggling student myself. I just learned the love of learning and the motivation to learn. So it was at that moment that I decided that I wanted to be able to motivate students to learn and to learn to love to learn. I think one of my proudest moments in teaching was a couple years ago when I had a student who had some severe disabilities and disadvantages. I had a little girl who had a hemispherectomy, which is actually where they remove the entire left hemisphere of your brain. So when she had left the hospital, she left with very low expectation of what her ability was going to be. And I met this little girl when she was in the hospital and decided from the moment that I set eyes on her that she was going to be in Mrs. Youngkin's kindergarten class. So took a little bit of moving around some red tape, but we got her in here, and I think my proudest moment was when I saw that little girl. First of all, she came in here in a wheelchair, so she didn't even walk when she first came into this classroom. So I guess two proud moments was getting her from being in a wheelchair to interacting with students and running around playing towards the end of the school year, but most important, just being able to give her a voice and the sense of learning how to write and read. So by the time she left here, even though she had had this expectation that she would never have the capability to learn, she left here just a tad below grade level and now has caught up because of the foundation she received here. So I would say that was my proudest moment. Okay, I would say my funniest situation with a student was during one of my evaluations with my principal. My principal had come in here when I was teaching a lesson. It was an inquiry lesson.
My name is Shelly Humman, and I teach 4th grade at Pima Elementary School. And I have been teaching since 2004. Well, truthfully, I was really inspired by my family, my mom and my husband. I had a different career in the counseling field and social services field, and my mom just always kept encouraging me that I would be a really great teacher and I should work in that capacity. I was working with kids in another capacity, and my husband was very, very supportive when we had a baby and when my child was about 3 months old, and I said, guess what, I'm going to go back and get my master's and become a teacher. So that they were really my inspiration to go back and change careers and do that. Well, obviously winning awards like this is really something to be proud of, but I think for me the moments that I'm the most proud of are just the little things when you know, the kids come back and see me many years later. Like, you know, I just the other day ran into one of my former students at the grocery store who's now in high school, and, you know, this huge guy, and, you know, came up and gave me a big hug and told me what he was going to do with his life and said, you know, Mrs. Humman, you always told me I could do whatever I wanted, and this is what I'm going to do, and how successful he was. And, you know, he had been a student who had struggled a little bit, and so, you know, it's those little moments, it's the knowing the impact that you had on a student, maybe not the year that you taught them, but maybe many years later. That's really the most profound for me.
My name is Beth Vermonic. I teach 4th grade foreign language immersion at Pueblo Elementary School. I originally wanted to write the skits for Sesame Street, and when I researched it, everybody had a degree in education, so I thought, well, I'll start being a teacher. And then when I started teaching, I loved it, and I never went back to Sesame Street. So I'm proud of my students every day. I'm just the proudest when they're proud of themselves, and I feel proud that I had a part in that to make them feel successful.
My name is Julie Sparks. I teach K through 5 physical education at Redfield Elementary School. Actually, I was studying journalism, and I was working in Chicago, and I had a break and I was watching TV, and they had an elementary school class on TV, and I was just mesmerized, and I just thought that I needed to take a whole different direction. Since my mom is a teacher, my sister's a teacher, it was just a natural choice for me. A couple things happened that I was really proud of during my teaching career. Just recently, I received an email from a former student about 17 years ago when I first started teaching, and she's a student at U of A, and she emailed me and said, I don't know if you remember me, and she's continued to tell me all her favorite memories of being in my 1st grade classroom, and it just meant the world to me. She was just very precious, and we just had a really special bond because my name's Julie, so I was Big Julie and she was Little Julie. And then also just recently I was looking through some clippings that I saved, and I had found this picture of a student that says, writing a letter to Mrs. Sparks from a hotel in Germany, and it's one of my other students. And it's just really special that parents would encourage that, and that this child took the time on his vacation to write to me. I'd like to read just a couple of quick funny things that I wrote down over the years. One of my students said in his journal, "It feels good to be smart," and I thought that was really precious. And then one of my little girls wrote, "Where's your mom like to shop?" Or one of the girls said, "Where's your mom like to shop?" And the other little girl said, "Everywhere. She can go for days. Once she shopped 2 days in a row." And another little thing that a student said once, she said, I feel sort of empty for food." I thought that was really cute. And then we were cleaning out our desks at the end of the year, and one of my students said, "Hey, Mrs. Sparks, there's a lot of memories in these desks." And it just put a big smile on my face. And the last thing that I just think is kind of humorous about being a teacher is no matter how you feel and no matter what you look like, children think you look like this, beautiful, all the time. And that makes it really special.
My name is Joy Funk, and I am at Sequoia Elementary School. Well, my mom's a teacher, so I've always been in the classroom, but as I look back, I think it started in 5th grade. I had Miss Taggy, who was like 105 years old, and she wore the hairnet and the full smock apron and had the cane, and she'd teach, and I was always one of those kids that didn't quite get it. I'd get it, but not her way, so I'd always get penalized. And so early on, I guess I didn't realize I learned a little bit differently, and I think as I went through high school, you know, I always excelled in many areas except for math. And so when I got to college, I'm like, something's not right here. So I found out that really it wasn't me, it was how I learned. And so I thought maybe I could bring that back to the classroom. A couple years ago, I had a student who is probably in college, first year of college this year, and he came back and he brought his mom and he shared everything with my class that he learned, and he could tell you in detail what we did. And that year that he was in my class, he was just kind of a basket case. He couldn't, his social skills were, you know, he couldn't get along with other kids. He was eating paper. I think he went through like a whole ream of paper, eating it that year. He chewed on everything. I had to take everything out of his desk, and there were so many things going on in his life. And hearing him, he goes, that was my transition year. That's the first year I made a friend, and he goes, that friend has been my lifelong friend. He goes, it helped me grow and be who I am. And we dress up and we act out, and he goes, I'm in drama. He goes, I found my place in 4th grade. And he's successful in school now, and I'm just really proud of him because I got to be a small part of who he became.
My name is Cheryl Hunter, and I teach an ELD class at Tavon Elementary School in 2nd grade. I've always wanted to be a teacher, and after my first son was born, I decided to go back to school and become a teacher. To come up with one proud moment is very difficult to do. There's lots of moments that students come up to me and I'm proud of them. That moment when they can say, I can do this, I did all my math problems in a minute, I read this all by myself, I got 100%. So there's lots of moments. Well, one of the funniest comments I ever got was from a student who wrote in her card, "You're the best teacher I never had."
My name's Chris Martin. I'm at Tonalea Elementary, and I work with 4th, 5th, and 6th grade language learners. I think it's from when I was a student, and so I saw what my favorite teachers did, and I thought that's what I want to do. And as I started babysitting and working with kids, I knew that's what I wanted to do. My proudest moment is probably when I had a student come back after he had several children, and he was a pilot. And so knowing that he was not only a language learner, but I get a little teary-eyed. It's great.
My name is Karen Weeble, and I teach 1st grade at Yavapai Elementary. My first degree actually was in business, and I was working in a job that I actually really liked, and kind of woke up one day and realized I wasn't making my mark on the world like I really wanted to, and just immediately kind of put a plan into motion to go back to school and become a teacher, to really do what I wanted to do and make a difference. I had some students who are now in SUPI come back to work with my students in first grade now. And the students at SUPI were identified because they were sound with academics and had become student leaders. And when she walked into my classroom, now as a 7th grader, I was so excited and so surprised to see her because she really is excelling now as a 7th grader. And I was thrilled and shocked.
My name is Jill Gramer. I teach at ANLC and I teach 1-2 split. I decided to become a teacher because I love books, and I just thought that if I could work and be around them all the time, it would be the best job ever, really. I would just say I feel proud anytime I see a kid who's gone from being a non-reader to a reader. To me, that's the most important thing. And you start at the beginning of the year, and they may not be able to read very much, read a couple words, and at the end of the year, it's sentences and then paragraphs and then whole stories, and it's just this amazing thing to see their eyes light up when they can really delve into a book and see where it can take them. There are too many to count, and I should write them down because I forget too easily, but yesterday I was meeting with a new group of kids, and we were introducing ourselves and talking about a favorite word, and her favorite word was lion, and I asked her why, this child, and she said, because I'm half lion. And I said, what do you mean, you're half lion? She said, well, no, I'm a whole human, but I'm half spirit lion. And I thought that was really cute.
My name is Elizabeth Missel, and I teach 5th and 6th grade, all subjects, and I teach at ANLC. Well, I did a lot of other things first, and I had an opportunity to go back to school, and at that time the web was just really starting to exist, and so I went to school and found out I was pretty good at coding, and I wound up being hired as a tutor, peer tutor, and really liked doing it. When I graduated, they offered me a job, and so I taught for 2 years and realized that that's what I really wanted to do. So I went back to school again and got my post-bac in education so that I could teach elementary. I was really trying to think about that, and it usually has to do with your students, something that they do that makes you really happy, that they either got an idea. But I think, and I just had this happen last week, one of the things that's really nice is that when they come back to see you, or they email you and they say, I was just working on this in another class, and this is 3, 4, 5 years down the road, and they say to you, I remember when we did this in your class. So then you know you had an impact on them. I think on that, I've always had a kind of a running joke with my kids because they're always curious, like, how old are you? How old are you? So I've always told them I was 100, 101, and now I'm up to 105 with them. But there was a little girl a couple years ago that somebody asked how old I was, and all the kids in the class said, well, she's 102. And this little girl believed it, and she was stunned. I mean, a 5th grader who was 102, I didn't know anyone could live. How old are your parents? Are they still alive? So I thought that was pretty fun to watch.
My name is Karina Preciado. I teach at Cheyenne Traditional School, grades 6th and 7th Spanish. I have grown up around educators my whole life, and I actually really loved school. I loved going to school. I loved all my teachers. In particular, middle school, I had the best time, and when I was in college, I originally was going to go into broadcast journalism, but realized that that was not my calling, that I couldn't wait to be in the classroom and have students of my own one day. There have been many, whenever a student of mine returns to come visit from high school, or gosh, I've even got students now in college, and they come back and tell me that they're still taking Spanish. That's amazing to me. But this year in particular, I have a student who has bounced around from school to school, not really finding a home, and he has been threatened with being retained from 6th to 5th grade, and he's actually thriving this year, and he's doing really well in Spanish, and he's excited to learn, and every day he comes in and he says, "Buenos dias, señorita," and it has a smile on his face that I didn't think I was ever going to see from him. So that makes me proud that I've inspired him to like it here and to want to continue learning. There's always the silly question in Spanish that you get, for instance, how do you say taco in Spanish? And well, it's taco. But there was one year where I had a student come in to me. It was before school started. I was in my classroom getting ready for the day, and I hear a knock on the door, and I go over to the door, and there's this kid who's standing there, and he's one of my more absent-minded students. and he says to me, "Can I please use the phone? I need to call my mom." And so I said, "Sure, you know, what do you need to use the phone for?" And he looks down and he points at his feet and he says, "Mis zapatos." And I looked down and sure enough, he'd forgotten his shoes. He was just in his socks. He jumped out of the car this morning, ran to the classroom and realized he didn't have any shoes on. So I couldn't believe it.
My name is Kathy Brown, and I'm a second grade teacher at Cheyenne Traditional School. I had been working in the financial industry for several years, and I didn't really feel like I was making much of a contribution to the world at large. And I thought back on my school years, and I had never really had a really fun teacher until I was in high school. And then I was in drama, and I had this amazing teacher who really inspired me. And when I thought back on that, I thought, I think I'd like to take a new direction and work with children, and that's why I became a teacher. I don't know if I'd say one of my proudest moments, but a fulfilling moment for me was I'd been teaching a couple of years, and I had a little boy in my class who was very quiet, and I called on him one day and he didn't answer me. And I waited a minute or two, maybe probably not that long really, and asked him again to respond, and he still didn't respond. And I started to realize there was something more going on. And I called his mother and told him about what had occurred in class, and the parents decided to have him evaluated neurologically. And they found, to my shock and the parents' shock, that he was having several thousand mini seizures a minute. And that really got my attention and made me realize that it was an awe-struck moment where I realized I always need to be watching all of my students, and just, they're all unique and all different. And that really made an impression on me. Well, the one that makes me smile is I had several years ago, we were having a Valentine's Day project, and I had been working with the students to help them put their projects together, and there was kind of a lull for a few minutes. And one of my little boys came over to me while I was sitting down, and he got down on one knee, and he took my hand and he kissed it, and he said, "Miss Broom, will you marry me?" And I was just, I know I went red in the face, and I was so surprised, and I said, "Oh, sweetheart, if you were just 30 years younger, I'd say yes." And so I will never forget that, no matter how long I live. That was a heartwarming and kind of tickling moment at the same time.
I'm Jeannie McDonald. I teach 5th grade at Copper Ridge School. I decided to become a teacher because it's something I've just always wanted to do. I remember playing teacher as a child, and I love school, so it was natural for me to go into teaching. One of my proudest moments is I had a 4th and 5th grade combination class, and we did a Veterans Day assembly. And my students did a choral reading of "I Am the Flag" for a bunch of veterans, and it made them cry. And everybody cried. That's a tough one because there's so many funny things, but I remember early on in my career there was a student, we were trying to do radius and circumference of a circle. He could remember circumference, but he couldn't remember radius, and so he said to me, "Mrs. McDonald, what is that word again? Circumference and ridiculous?" He thought the word was ridiculous.
Julianne Wilfert. I teach 7th grade language arts at Copper Ridge. That one's easy. I was in advertising out of my undergrad, and my mom, Gay Wilfert, was a teacher at Cocopa, and I came back into town to visit her. In the very moment I walked into her classroom, I knew that's what I wanted to do, and I haven't looked back ever since. Honestly, I have so many, but if I had to narrow it down, it's really more of a global thought of I see a lot of my children after they've graduated even college, and they come back and still remember moments from my class, which is incredible to me after all those years. Probably my favorite moments aren't even in the classroom, they're more outside of school, because the kids will duck behind counters in different places in stores and Target and the mall, and you'll just kind of feel eyes upon you, and then you'll look and they'll be hiding behind things and pointing at you. That's probably my favorite thing, is that you have movie star status out in the world, which is fun.
My name is Tristan Miller. I teach 7th grade English Language Arts at Cocopa Middle School. Well, About 10 years ago, I decided that there had to be more to life than what I was doing when I was working in the corporate world. And I came home one day and said to my husband, there's got to be more. And so I quit my job and went back to school. And my goal was to just make one day of middle school better for even one kid. So, goodness, there's been many. But probably the proudest moment was about 6 years ago. I had a young lady who at the beginning of the school year, she really struggled, and she could not even write a sentence. She couldn't understand how to write even more than 2 or 3 words. And at the end of the year, she wrote a full paragraph and did it beautifully. And I still choke up about it. It was just a really strong moment for me and for her. Well, I work with middle school, so every day is funny. But one of the funniest situations happened in class one time when I had a young lady whose birthday, it was her 13th birthday. And she was so excited she could not contain herself. So she sat in class, and I was teaching, we were working on something, I don't even remember what, but every 30 seconds she'd just go like that. And pretty soon she couldn't contain it anymore, and she just started giggling, which made me start giggling. And then we fed off of each other for a minute, and pretty soon the whole class was laughing. So I just threw my papers in the air, and we all laughed for the last half hour of class together. And I had kids laughing all over, and it stands out in my mind as one of the funniest days ever.
I'm Linda Hill. I teach 8th grade language arts at Desert Canyon Middle School. Well, when I was little, my 1st and 2nd grade teachers I loved, and I wanted to become a teacher. But my journey took a turn, and my bachelor's degree is in medical technology. And I spent some time in hospital laboratories. But then when I had my own children, that love of seeing kids learn and be excited about that made me go back for my post-bac and then my master's in education. Oh, you know, you have them every year where you feel accomplished and things have gone the way you want. But I think that being able to teach 20 years, and I've enjoyed teaching. I've had different experiences at different grade levels. I would say that is one of my proudest moments. And then, of course, I'm honored by my peers giving me this honor. I've been thinking about that, and I think if I taught kindergarten or 1st grade, I'd have a book full. But with 8th graders, it's kind of the day passes really fast. And I think that they kind of melt together and kind of form that tapestry at the end that you kind of remember and look back on fondly. So I don't have just one moment.
I'm Christine Hawes, and I'm the teacher librarian at Ingleside Middle School, so I have all our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. Honestly, I decided to be a teacher when I was in the 1st grade, and my teacher, Sister Jogues, whenever she would leave the room, would put me in charge, and it's like, oh, I like this. But eventually, as an adult, I decided that I really liked to work with kids, and I've never regretted that decision. Probably, besides seeing my students be successful, one of my proudest moments was when I earned my National Board Teacher Certification. National Board Certification is a rigorous process by which teachers have to videotape themselves teaching, write a commentary about the videotapes, demonstrate that they do things outside the classroom that have meaning for kids. And so when I achieved my certification, I was really gratified. Well, first of all, my kids say hilarious things 100 times a day. So I laugh 100 times a day, which means I'm not tired of it after 34 or 35 years of teaching. But probably the funniest situation was when a student I had, when I taught in parochial schools, did something exceedingly inappropriate. And in his letter of apology, he indicated that he was very sorry because he had offended Ms. Hawes and God. So I found it sort of funny that I got top billing.
Sally Chalfin at Mountainside Middle School, and I teach 6th grade history. again, not so much that why I became a teacher, because that was selfish reasons to get on the same schedule as my son. My undergraduate degree was in something totally different. But I didn't know at the time was how much I was going to love it. So I guess a better question is, why have I stayed a teacher for 22 years? I absolutely love it. I love the kids. I love watching them grow. It's just the greatest pleasure. One that comes to mind, I mean, I have so many older former students who come back and talk to me. And I had one a couple of years ago who got in touch with me. And I had her back in 1991. And she is now a teacher. And she's a Phoenix Union High School English teacher. And she had won Teacher of the Year. And she got in touch with me to thank me for being her teacher. And it was just, so I hear from quite a few, but it's hearing from the former students and knowing the impact I've had on their lives. I could write a book, I think, if I had kept notes of all of them. So many funny moments. The words that come out of their mouths. This year, actually, I had a really funny one. We were in China, and we were studying Confucius and his proverbs, and I had the kids analyzing what was Confucius trying to say, you know, what makes sense of this, put this in your own words. And as we were finishing analyzing quite a number of them, I had a student raise their hand, and he said, "So is his name Confucius because everything he says is confusing?" And I thought, well, maybe. But it made the whole class laugh, and it was just one of those funny moments.
My name is Yvonne Navarro. I work in Supay Middle School, and I teach 7th and 8th grade classes. I do a program called Read 180, so I do teach reading all day long. I have decided to be a teacher for many different reasons. The first reason is I always believe in dreams. I come from a family that they don't have education, and I always wanted to make differences in people's lives. So I thought that teaching students, I could do something like that. I have had a lot of proudest moments, but I think one of the proudest moments I've ever had teaching is when I get a phone call, and it's a phone call from a student. They just call me and just say that I made a difference in their lives. That's just, it's just very important for us. That's what it keeps us going and keep doing what we're doing. You know, teaching is just beautiful. I think all teachers, we have had a lot of funny situations, but I don't have one specific in mind. And I think instead of a funniest situation, I'm going to tell you the happiest situation. And it's going to sound ironic, but last year I had a student that she had cancer. And I went to visit at the hospital, and you know, her biggest dream was to go to Disneyland. So we have all these connections, and David Beckham, the soccer famous player, called her and said that, you know, keep recovering, keep working on school, and then I will personally take you to Disneyland. The look on my students' eyes was
My name is Jennifer Duclos. I teach math, geometry, and calculus at Arcadia High School. Well, I wanted to be a teacher since I was like 5 years old. It's the only thing I ever said I wanted to be when I was growing up. I think it's because I really love learning so much, and so I really wanted to help students love learning. And then I decided to be a high school math teacher when I was a student at Arcadia. I had a teacher who still teaches at Arcadia. Her name is Mrs. Thomas, and I had her for 2 years, and she made me a huge math nerd, so that's why I picked high school math. Well, I've had a lot of proud moments, but I think that the proudest moment for me is when a student says that this is the first time that they have ever really enjoyed math, felt like they love math, and felt like they're good at math. Because I think if I can make students enjoy math and feel like they can succeed at it, then I'm doing a good job. But I think funniest question actually happened just a couple of weeks ago. We were reviewing for a quiz, and there was a formula they were supposed to memorize for the quiz. They weren't allowed to have a formula page or anything. And right when I'm about to hand out the quizzes, the kid in the front row holds out his arm and says, "Hey, I have a question. Is this the right formula?" And he had written it on his arm, and he had no clue that that was not okay. And the whole class cracked up. It was pretty funny.
Conrad Davis. I teach sophomore honors English at Chaparral. Well, I just enjoyed working with young people. I played football in college, and I coached some high school kids while I was in college. And actually, I decided to become a teacher because originally I wanted to be a football coach. But economics intervened after I got married, and so I then gave that up in favor of a second job. I think the proudest moments I've had as a teacher is when someone told me that I gave them confidence to believe in themselves as a student, and so they took that away with them and gave them a new perspective on life. Year before or last year, I guess it was, one of my enterprising students sent me a message, and it looked very official, like some notice from the office. And I read it, and it said, "What is the difference between a cat and a comma?" Do you happen to know that? No. Well, the difference is that a cat has claws at the end of his paws, and a comma has a pause at the end of a clause. When I told that to my students, they thought I should get a life.
My name is Ivan Pasek, and I am at Coronado High School, and I teach German and Spanish. Actually, all my grandparents were teachers or school principals. My mother is a school principal. My father is a university professor, and I decided to follow their steps, and I love it. And the proudest moment will be probably when we send students from Coronado for the first time on a youth exchange program. Before that, we have never sent anybody to go to Mexico or Switzerland or Brazil or Argentina. So for five last years, we were sending kids to those countries, and they were coming excited and with new worldview, and I think it's the proudest moment in my teaching career.
Campbell. I teach English 1 and English 2 pre-diploma at Desert Mountain High School. Well, I think it was sort of serendipitous. When I got out of University of Arizona, I actually was a stewardess for a while. Then I got married. Then I was a bank manager. Then I was lucky enough to be a stay-at-home mom. And when the kids got into high school, I thought, well, I'm going to go back to school and just take some courses that interest me. I had been an English major. So I took the courses, ended up suddenly in student teaching, came out of student teaching thinking, I'm never going to be able to teach. And I got a call the day before school started from a high school in California, and it was serendipitous because I loved doing it, but I fell into it. Well, actually, I've just experienced a lot of proud moments today with some presentations my students have been giving, but I think one of the highlights of being a teacher is that there's so many proud moments. But I think one of my proudest was a student that I actually taught in California who was English was a second language for them. And no one in their house had ever graduated from high school, much less gone to college. And she invited me to her college graduation just 2 years ago. So I sat with her family as she graduated from college. I think that's one of my proudest moments. Okay, every day brings humor. But I think when I do a Raisin in the Sun at the end of the year, the students have to enact the play and scenes, and then they explicate it for theme and characterization. And one of my students, all of them every year, we never have enough girls to go around for the girl part, so males have to do it. And one year, it was when one young man played the role, the matriarch, Mama, and he came in and we had tears rolling down our eyes, and I was really afraid he was going to make a parody of the role. But once we started the act, he was Mama. He was Mama, but every year I have humorous moments with that play.
Okay, my name is Bob LaRue. I teach economics for 12th grade at Saguaro High School. For a lot of reasons, mostly because some of the teachers that I've had when I was here, Mr. Cady, Miss Burkle, Mr. Cozart, and they had such an influence on my life as a high school student that I wanted to have a similar influence on future generations. I've taught 20 years, so there's quite a few moments. Coaching's probably easier because I had a state championship team in 2004 that had been to 3 finals, and so there was a lot of pressure on them to repeat. And so that was a proud moment. Teaching-wise, probably seeing, having parents come back to me with thank you notes and expressions of gratitude, just telling me that that their kid, might not have made it through high school and college without some of the things that I did for their kids. So that's probably the things I'm most proud of when you see kids that have gone on to be successful later in life. Well, most of my situations are where you get words screwed up and it comes out wrong, and so then you're trying to dig yourselves out of a hole, which probably some of those you can't repeat on the camera. Probably the funniest situation was my first year teaching. When I got observed for the first time, and I had a principal here who was real serious and intimidating, and when I went in to get my evaluation, he told me, "Were you aware of some kids that weren't paying attention?" And I said no, because I was so focused on the lesson. "Were you aware that you had a student sleeping in the back?" And I said no. And finally, this real serious guy goes, "Were you aware that a Kleenex box flew over my head during the middle of the lesson?" And so, it's not directly related to the kids, but other than stuff that you just get screwed up because you say stuff wrong.
Okay, my name is Jeremy Parento. I am a high school social studies teacher at Sierra Vista Academy. The question I'm going to answer is, why did I want to teach alternative ed or at-risk students? And really, it's because that's the world that I came from. I would have been considered an at-risk student when I was in school, and I just feel that it takes certain people to understand the kids that we work with at this school. That, I would have to say, a couple of years ago, it was an email that I got from a parent. It was during the time of the Haiti earthquake. I guess before school, the parent was dropping their kid off. They were driving to school. On the radio, there was an announcement about the earthquake, and she commented how, that's terrible. And her son just said, you mean what's going on in Haiti, that island down in the Caribbean Sea, kind of south of Florida?" And he just kind of went into detail on where it was located. It just so happened that at that time, that's what we were studying in class, the Caribbean and the islands and things. And his mom, in the letter that she sent to me, she said at that moment, that was like the first time her son ever told her something that he knew or he learned in school, and she was just so happy about that. And I think the funniest moment that I've had was actually my first year teaching. It had absolutely nothing to do with education either. I had a rather large cardboard box in my room, and I don't remember what was in it at first, but it was empty, and we had a little guy in the class at the time. It was actually a middle school. It was a middle school class, and some of the kids were like, "Wow, it's a big box and all this," and they're like, "We bet Larry could fit in that box." I'm like, "Yeah, he probably could. Actually, hold on, I have an idea." So I had Larry get in the box, and we called our school custodian, and I called him and said, "Hey, I have this really big box full of books. I got to get it out of here. Can you help me with it? Can you bring over the hand truck and so I can cart it out?" And so he comes over, and I at first offered to move the box myself, and he's like, no, don't worry about it, I'll take care of it. And so as he goes over to the box and he goes to grab it to move it so he can get it on the hand truck, Larry jumps out of the box.